Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Liv Constantine. Liv Constantine is the pen names of sisters Lynne Constantine and Valerie Constantine. Lynne and Valerie are Wall Street Journal and USA Today international best-selling authors with over 1 million copies sold worldwide. Their books have been translated into 28 languages, are available in 33 countries, and are in development for both television and film. Their novels have been praised by USA Today, The Sunday Times, People Magazine, and Good Morning America, among others. Their debut novel, The Last Mrs. Parrish, is a Reese Witherspoon Book Club selection. So fun. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful to have you guys. And I love this. I love the idea that the two of you are sisters who can work together, because I'm not really sure that would work with my sister and me. So you'll have to tell us a little bit about that. But first, we are celebrating the launch of The Senator's Wife. So will you guys please tell our listeners, or one of you, I'm sure you guys already know how to do this, about The Senator's Wife.
Sure. So The Senator's Wife takes place in Washington, D.C., and is the story of Sloan Chase Montgomery, who is recently remarried. It's been a couple of years since she's been in D.C. She's been married about 6 months, and she and her new husband, Senator Whit Montgomery, moved back. And before she can resume her duties as the head of a philanthropic foundation, she needs hip surgery because she's been living with lupus for the past 20 years. So what they do is start to interview home healthcare workers, and they find who they think is the perfect match in Athena Karras. So Athena comes and moves in. She's only supposed to be there for maybe a week or two. But instead of getting better after the surgery, Sloan slowly gets worse and worse. And over time begins to wonder, is Athena there making her better? Or is Athena the reason she's getting worse? And that's it.
Okay, and it is from there. It is just an exciting, wild ride until the end, which we can't tell you about, but you're going to want to get to, because I was glued to the pages. So if I look a little tired, no, I finished this. I finished it ages ago, but I looked a little tired that morning too. So tell us, you guys remember the seed for the story, how this story developed?
We knew that we always begin with the twist. And then the story evolves from there. But we, especially today, I think more and more people bring into their homes people that they don't know. An agency, you have recommendations from an agency or a hospital, and this person comes in, they have access to everything. And more and more that is happening. And we're in that situation, whether it's an illness or an injury, as in Sloan's case, where it's just a temporary thing. But we're very open and sort of susceptible to somebody who really, might not be everything that we think they are. And so that was part of the genesis of it, and just thinking about, well, what are the things that can happen, and who might this person be, or not?
Right. And what can go wrong, and especially in a situation with home health care workers, right, where they are doling out your medication. Right. I mean, you are just, and every pill looks the same. Nothing really says what it is. And if it's in a bottle, you assume it's the pill that's in the bottle, but who knows, right? It really is. You are so vulnerable.
So vulnerable, exactly.
And especially in a situation where Sloan is a very wealthy woman, so there's a chance that somebody, a good chance that somebody might show up, hoping to sort of, get something from her. So that is it's a really, and like you said, it's a really relevant conversation to have right now as we have this generation, particularly. I mean, Sloane's a young person, a young woman. So it's more that we think about this happening with our, aging parents, or, that is super, so tricky.
Yeah, and we're also in a time when it's very easy to mask who you are and to create credentials that are really not true, that they're false credentials. It's an easier thing to do, I think, than in the past. So you can hide someone can hide who they really are.
So true. And it's a fabulous premise, and it opens up so many possibilities, which you guys, of course, execute flawlessly, because that's what you're known for. So tell me about the process, because this is, the collaboration part, of course, is, I think, so interesting to so many of our listeners. As you're doing this, how does it work? Is it, sometimes the idea is from Lynn, sometimes it's from Val, and then do you go back and forth before you start? Can you let us into a little of that
Sure.
that secret sister stuff?
So it's a lot of talking, a lot of brainstorming, and we really try to be as non-critical and judgmental. So we say, and any crazy thing that comes is open, because some of our best actually twists have come from like a joke or a crazy idea that we've then said, oh, hold on, that could work. So we talk a lot, and it takes a while before we both come to something that we both can get excited about. Like there might be something I think would be great, and Valerie's like, I just am not feeling it, or vice versa. So it has to be something that we both are totally on board with. And once we have figured that out, then we start to develop the characters and the setting, all of those things. And it can take weeks to months before the foundation is laid for the book that we're going to write. And that just occurs, like I said, over hours on either FaceTime or Zoom, or if we're lucky enough to be together, which has happened in some cases, then it's in person. And so once we have ironed out those details, then we begin the writing. And I'll let Valerie, I'll move it over to her, so I'm not sharing everything myself. Go ahead. So,
well, when the writing starts, we start with a fairly general outline of where we're going, but it is general. And that allows us to sort of work organically and let things evolve as the characters want to evolve. And so we talk every morning, and it's usually a FaceTime talk. And we decide, we give each other assignments. Like, today you're writing chapter such and such, and here's what it's about, and this is what you need to accomplish in this chapter. And then, and so we do our writing, and at the end of the day, we exchange what we've written, with the absolute, proviso that to edit this, any suggestions, anything you'd like to add, or you think I should delete, or what, and as Lynn said, you have to check your ego at the door and accept the constructive criticism or the ideas of each other. And that would be the only way to be able to collaborate and have it be a fun thing to do and not onerous.
Right.
And so that's how we continue on and on until we finish our first draft. And then there's a whole nother process that starts.
So let's stick at that for a second. So I'm super curious about this. So for instance, when you talk in the morning and you're like, okay, Lynn, you're on chapter 3. Valerie, does that mean you take chapter 4? Do you guys kind of each take a different, or parts of the same chapter? How does that work?
I mean, sometimes both. So it depends. Sometimes we'll write consecutively, or might even be out of order, just whatever. Like, we look at it as a scene, but often one of us will send the other half a chapter and say, kind of ran out of steam. Can you finish this? What would you like to add? And the other one will do so. Or there'll be certain holes, like Valerie, I think, is much better at describing things. So I don't take the time. I just describe the living room, and I send that to her, because why should I struggle with it when I know that it comes so easily to her? I can do it if I have to. And sometimes it will be the same thing, whether it's, a dialogue or this or that. Valerie will send it to me and say, just fill this in. And so that just goes back and forth. And then I usually keep the master document just so it's not confusing. So I will continue, Valerie will send me a revised chapter, or if she edited my chapter, then I'll just go through it and plop it right into the master thing. And then I'll continue to update her, every couple of days with a new manuscript. So.
Okay, got it. So there's kind of this, even it's really like by the end of the draft, you guys have both sort of had your hands on all of it. It's
Yes.
not like every other, because then
Mhm.
the voices would maybe change, and it's
Yeah.
important, right, to make those. So the people writing, for instance, the Athena chapters, it's both of you. It's not like one of you takes a point of view. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Which makes, because I do feel like there's a real challenge to making that voice sound consistent. And yet, as I read, I'm not thinking like, there's no point where I'm like, well, this doesn't sound the same as the last one. It all feels very much like it was written by the same human, which I think is really impressive.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
so now, do you guys write it sounds like when you say, we talk in the morning, do you write every day? I mean,
Yes.
We do. And sometimes, often weekends as well.
Yeah.
Usually Sundays, unless something is really pressing and we're on a time constraint where we have to work on a Sunday, but normally we'll take Sundays off.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
To have a little break.
Yeah.
But there is something also, and maybe you guys find this too, that if you leave a book aside for even a couple of days, right, you sort of lose it's like not talking to somebody you talk to every day. You're like, what happened? I missed out on this, and now I'm a little bit lost. And it really is beneficial to be there every day.
And I think when you
it's
stop,
hard.
when you stop writing,
that's it. I mean, when
practice.
Well, it is. It's hard to get back into it, and then we find ourselves procrastinating, like, oh, I don't feel it. But then, after a couple of days, as you're right, you get into it, then it starts to flow again. But it is. I mean, I really don't like, even though it's obviously nice to have a break, but even when the book is finished, and there's that time in between, I feel at a loss when I'm not working on something. So I'm sure you feel that way, Danielle. Well, you write a lot. Super proficient, so you write a lot of prolific. I mean, proficient.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm proficient, but I'm not always, but I am. Yeah, I'm right in the middle. I'm in that space now where I have an idea, kind of, but I don't have anything to write. And it's a little fish out of water, right? It's like, I kind of feel like, what am I supposed to do with my life if I'm not writing a book?
Exactly.
And people are like, take a break, enjoy.
Go out in your garden, and
it's hard. It's very hard.
Well, the first few days are okay, because it's like, oh, I have so many things I can do.
Right.
Neglected. And then after those few days, you're sort of like, okay, now what? As you said, what do I do?
And there's a lot of things that I neglect because I don't really want to do them. So then I'm like,
yes, right.
Wait, I'd rather go back to writing books. So tell me, you guys have done a bunch of books. I know The Last Mrs. Parrish was first. And then tell us the order, because I know if for people who haven't discovered you guys yet, there are quite a number of Liv Constantine books.
So it's The Last Mrs. Parrish, The Last Time I Saw You, which they're not related, even though they both have the last in the
yes.
The Wife Stalker, The Stranger in the Mirror, and then we do have a little novella prequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish called The First Shot.
Which was great. I read that. That's so fun. Or listen to it, I guess, right? Is it it was
it is original. It was an Audible original first. It is now ebook and print. And then we have Misconception, which is another Audible original, Audible only at this point. And now The Senator's Wife.
That's amazing. So you guys you're really prolific. Plus, Lynn, you're also writing under Elsie Shaw.
Yes.
And so can you talk just for a minute about how different that feels from from the experiences of writing as Liv Constantine?
It's it's very different. I mean, I have nobody that I can send my chapters to or get help or describe things in those books, but they are more action thrillers, straight thrillers. So they differ, obviously in tone from The Last Mrs. Parrish. They're much darker. And it's been a while. I mean, I really need to finish the third in that series. I have to get back to that. But what I'm hoping, I wrote a pilot for the network, so I'm really hoping to find somebody to take that to film, because that would be my, my hope. I mean, as we all do.
Well, good for you. So you wrote you did the screenplay for the pilot. I
did. Yeah.
That is now so now what about I feel like I've heard buzzing about The Last Mrs. Parrish. Is there any things you can share about that?
So Netflix, it's under option, and they did renew the option for us. And we have two amazing writers that are attached to it that everyone's excited about. And then of course with the writer's strike, everything is on hold. So hopefully that gets resolved, and hopefully the writers do well because we're with them. And until that happens, we really don't have an update. But
I know, I really feel badly for the writers. I can't imagine the position that puts them in. And yeah, a lot of people in the same boat. So let's hope it ends quickly. So I've heard you guys talk a little bit also about sort of the process once the draft is done. Do you sort of each go back and read the book in its entirety sort of on your own and then come together with, how does that work?
We do that. We we go through it. We probably read it. I don't even know how many times we read it, but we do that separately. So right now, because we are working on something where we've just finished the second draft. So right now I'm reading it and going through and making changes, which I will then send to Lynne, and she will either accept my changes. Of course, she'll accept all of my changes.
Right. Because of course they're perfect. It's perfect.
Yes, right. And make changes of her own or suggestions or whatever. And sometimes it isn't even just changing things, but maybe a note about, well, what do you think should we do? Do you think this should still be here, or should we change this to blah, 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 or whatever, something where we would need to have a more collaborative way instead of my just going ahead and doing something. And so then she does the same thing. And we read it so many times, but I just always think of that thing that says about write something that you would love to read because you will read it 1,000 times.
It's so true.
That, right? It's true.
And isn't it crazy that you can read it 1,000 times, and on the 1,000th time you're like, how did I miss this typo?
Yes,
990
them. Right.
I know.
Somebody else who finds something. And even when you get to the advanced reader copy, and
I know
still errors.
Even the final one sometimes still
right.
And all these others look at it.
I know.
I used to be in marketing, and just having to send a letter out, would be looking at it a million times for typos. It was so stressful. And that's one letter, right? And so when you think about 300, 400 pages, it's no wonder that stuff gets missed.
It is no wonder. And readers aren't always very kind about it either, which I don't appreciate. I do have a great story I'll share about my first arc, the arcs that came on my second book. In the very opening scene, my character wakes up in a car without knowing how she got there, and she looks up at the clock on the dash to figure out the time, and they left the L out of clock in the arc.
I think I read that book. I don't remember that, because isn't that the book I learned?
That's Ruthless. It's Ruthless Game, and they fixed
I didn't.
it.
That's not the one. Okay,
they fixed it. They fixed it in the final copy, but I was like, I can't have a cock on the dash in the first 2 pages of this book. So I
ended a whole different genre.
Right. I was like, wait, maybe it would help with my, romance cross sales, but nothing else about that book was romantic. I was like, oh my God, this is awful. I was also a newbie, right? So I was like, is this going to go out like this? And how do I prevent that from happening? So that was super, super terrifying. So, I know. So I hear, I hear now that there's some exciting news around The Last Mrs. Parrish in terms of book news. Can you talk about that? Yes, I don't want to give anything away in case it's not my place.
No, it's fine. It's been announced. No, we're right. The book that we're now working on is the sequel, which is, finished. First or second draft is finished. So we will turn that in to our editor in August, and hopefully we'll be out around this time next year. Hopefully.
Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, we can say that we have brought in characters from the prequel.
Okay.
And so the character list has expanded to include Amber's life before she met Jackson. And I guess that's all we can really say.
Yeah.
Fair.
We can say it's going to be 3 three female points of view. So you'll get to hear from Daphne again and Amber, and now you'll get Daisy Ann, who is a very strong character that we love from the prequel.
And she's from Texas, so part of
Texas,
yes, it takes place in Dallas.
Yeah, so you get to go to Dallas in this book.
Right.
That's so fun. So when you guys, so you obviously don't live that close together, but do you make it a point to sort of like, so when you set this book in Texas, did you guys travel down there, or do you do it, virtually? How does that work?
We were going to go, right? We had planned to go, and we've both been, so we have some experience there, and we have friends there, but we didn't actually make it this time to Dallas, but I think hopefully we still did a good job of conveying. Yeah.
I'm sure you did. Plus, you can always, then you get to go down there and celebrate the launch of the book, which will be super exciting,
yes,
right?
Exactly. Hopefully that will be good.
Now, are you guys doing a tour for the Senator's Wife?
Yes. We are. I'm heading up to Connecticut Sunday, as a matter of fact, and we're starting there.
So now, when you guys tour, do you tour together?
We do. We start. I mean, it's typically, this one is about 3 weeks, I guess, because we're starting on launch. We'll be in Connecticut for a week. Then I'll go down to Maryland, and we'll be in 2 or 3 places in Maryland, and then in DC. Then we'll end up in New Jersey, and then we'll split up. And then I'm doing a few different events here, and I think Valerie as well. So, as things may come up, if it's something local to Valerie or local to me, we'll probably just do them individually, because it just becomes a little difficult to keep back and forth.
Right. Absolutely. But it must be so fun to get to sit up there together.
It makes me want to,
yeah. So fun, right? It makes me want to call my sister and be like, let's write a book. But
she try it.
She doesn't write books, but it could be a thing. Yeah. I mean, that is, so do you remember, so at what point you were already writing books? Were you, Lynn, is that right? When you guys started working together, or was that how your career started?
Was how it restarted, but we had written a book together, which is out there, called Circle Dance. And that's written for Lynne Constantine and Valerie Constantine. And that was over 20 years ago. And before I moved, when I was still in Maryland, before I had children, and we were talking, we used to read a lot of books about different families and family sagas. And I said to Valerie, there really isn't a book about a Greek family, so why don't we write one? So I went and ordered a book, How to Write and Sell Your First Novel. Read the book, we did all the things.
Right.
And, this was no email or anything back then. For the last week, actually, Valerie brought her huge computer over to my house and set it up in the living room. And she worked downstairs and I worked upstairs for like 7 days, because it had taken us a year to write half of it. We wanted to finish it. Right. And we finished it. And we didn't do what we do now. We didn't do 3 or 4 edits. We just sent it out. Like, of course, we're going to get an agent immediately, and it's going to sell, all the wrong things.
Right.
Yeah. So we did finally get a publisher, very small publisher, who did like a limited print run, and that came out. And then we bought the rights back years later, and we did re-edit it again. It probably could use one more. I don't know. It's a very different. It's really. What we do love about it is the family in it, and the characters. I think the characters are very dynamic, but it is a first novel, so we don't really talk about it that much, but it's got decent reviews. It's got a 4 average, I think.
What's really interesting is to think about, and this was a little over 20 years ago, which is really not a huge span of time. But when you think about the way things work now, when we wrote Circle Dance, we had to make a copy of the book and mail it.
Yeah. I know.
Agents. Right. There was just no, and
with a SAS, right? With a self-addressed.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was always with the knowledge that you might never hear from anybody, which meant we're not interested. But it was like, well, how long do we wait, and how many we send to at the same time? And so it was such a different process.
Yeah, my first book came out in 2000.
Okay, same. So
so I remember that, and in fact, I have all the rejection letters from those first books in a xylophone folder. I always used to joke that I was going to like wallpaper a bathroom, but I don't think I have a bathroom big enough anymore. So, but it is, it is so different now. And, so then you guys had a long break. You were doing your own things, living your own lives, raising children.
Right.
Val, you had a really interesting career, right?
Well, parts of it were, yes. So you're talking about the White House days, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that was really fun and different and interesting. Yeah, exciting. It was an exciting time.
Was that kind of an interesting thing to kind of return to DC in a book?
It was, absolutely. It was. Yeah. And just thinking, you just really see, no matter what, when you work for the government, and especially in DC, no matter how high or how not high your position is, you really do see what power does to people. And it's very interesting what it
It
does.
is very interesting, right? It is, yeah, exactly. I will leave it at that. But I think there's certainly a lot of that in here, which is super fun to read about. So I love that. And then you came, and then so what prompted the sort of okay, was it the idea for The Last Mrs. Parrish? Can you remember how that kind of came together?
I went to Thriller Fest, which was really what reignited my writing career. So I had moved to Connecticut, and I saw in Writer's Digest an ad for Thriller Fest. So I went by myself, and it felt like this, oh, I've written a book, I'm a writer. And I started meeting all of these people, right, who've written 20 books, younger than I am. I'm like, okay, you loser, you gotta get, you can't be
right.
I feel like I was from all these years ago, right?
I was there too. It's the worst.
So
yeah.
I finished my website, and I finished the network, which at the time was called The Veritas Deception. And I said to Valerie, you really need to come with me. It was so inspiring and such great classes. And she said, well, I'm not a thriller writer. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. It's craft is craft. Just come. So she did, and she got invigorated as well. And that's when she said, what do you think about collaborating again? And I said, sure, I would love to. So we wrote a book, which was called Black Eyed Susans, which is in a drawer. Not, kept getting, it was one of those books where you get like, how it is, the interest, but it never quite makes it.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. You could wallpaper too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we need more rooms.
Right. Yeah. So I was visiting her, and I don't think it was just like a family visit, right? We were just taking a walk in the neighborhood, and we were discussing life and women, and these women who are very mercenary, who like decide they want to marry somebody just for the money, and they don't care about the wife and the kids. And we looked at each other and said, no, wouldn't it be interesting if things turned out differently, and if they didn't really get everything that they wanted? And we said, that's the book we have to write. Right. So that's how Last Mrs. Parrish. So we worked on that, and then the next year got our agent. That's
one of the things I love about your books. Is those women characters, right? These women who, and there are some of them are, I mean, they're smart women. Some of them are, not all of them are like perfectly moral, but and that's, that's valid too, right? But the fact is they're scrappy, right? Those are women that have overcome really hard stuff. And I love that, because I think as we get to be a certain age, there's a lot of shit, pardon my French, that's dumped on women that we have to sort of overcome without the, a lot of the sort of naturally given gifts that men get, right? Especially white men. So I think it's lovely to like read about these women who are like, oh no, you are not taking,
my turn.
Yeah. And you are not taking me down. And I think that's inspirational. And I feel like for people, going through life and, turning 50 or whatever it is, lupus is a real thing. And I think the way you handled Sloane's disease was incredibly sensitive too. And I think that is also really powerful for women who are, suffering and sick. So I really like, it's a story, and it's a wonderfully fast moving, fast paced, fun read, but you're left with this, like, there's more to it. You know what I mean? There's this extra, like, you got this, girl, kind of sense in your books. And I love that. And, I can't wait to read the new Mrs. Parrish, or the next, whatever she is, because that is another one where I felt like, it was a really great, and I'm not going to talk about the ending. I have to believe everybody in the world has already read that book, but for those three humans who haven't yet read it, we will not spoil anything. So, well, this is so exciting. I'm so thrilled about this book. I'm so thrilled to get to see you guys and have you on the show. And Lynn, I'm so happy. Lynn and I are going to be at Thriller Fest, which is the International Thriller Writers Annual Conference in New York City, which is here. In fact, it'll be coming out. I think this. I'm going to be messed. I'm going to have to look at now and tell myself to remind myself. Yeah. So this, our show will air on the 25th of
May.
I
know. I never know. I feel like half the time I don't know what month it is either.
What
year is it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So when you guys are listening to this fabulous show, Lynn and I will be getting together about a week and a half after that.
Yeah.
And we will be giving away, in conjunction with this, look for on the Killer Women podcast page, we will have a giveaway of the final version of this book. So you can enter that. And in the meantime, ladies, keep up the fabulous work. And I can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you and reading what you've got next too. So get back to work.
Exactly.
Yes.
I got to take off my shirt that so perfectly matches this cover.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I know, I'm telling you. Don't you think I should be able to write off the purchase if it's part of my
I think so.
Yeah.
Don't tell my tax accountant. Okay. Anyway, this has been Killer Women with the incredible duo of Valerie and Lynne Constantine, writing as Liv Constantine, and The Senator's Wife, which is out the 23rd.
Yes.
And so go pre-order it right this second, or grab your copy. It's not to be missed.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Danielle. Great to be with you.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.